to begin. A recipe for asynchronous togetherness by mail in Amanda Sum's New Age Attitudes live in concert. In the early pages of his book on dialogic art, titled Conversation Pieces, Grant Kester asks, what does it mean for an artist to surrender the security of self-expression for the risk of intersubjective engagement? This question digs at a kind of lurking insecurity that dogs participatory art, pitting control by the artist in opposition to randomness introduced by interactive audiences. Claire Bishop, author of the book with the best title ever, Artificial Hells, Participatory Art and the Politics of Spectatorship, recognizes this randomness as a key feature that instigates the creation of this kind of work. She writes, the gesture of ceding some or all authorial control is conventionally regarded as being more egalitarian and democratic than the creation of a work by a single artist, while shared production is also seen to entail the aesthetic benefits of a greater risk and unpredictability. For Kester, the outcome of participation is a loss of control with possibly undesirable results. For Bishop, it's an aesthetic benefit. By creating opportunities for audience players to contribute as co-creators to purposely permeable and responsive works of art, the authorship of participatory work teeters between the stability of curation by the instigating artist and the richness of the unknown but raw input of the audience. And this tension between control and randomness is a key dramaturgical feature of popular participation in all its applications, whether in art or politics. Frankly, I think the way that Kester sets up his question, framing what the artist does as surrender and what the participatory audience does as risk, is a kind of a straw man. And I think Kester is doing this on purpose, since after all, it is a book about dialogic interactions. First, any performed artwork manifesting not only in space, but also in time, is subject to the variability innate to performance. One pianist's performance of a Beethoven sonata will necessarily be different from another. See also Centuries of Hamlets. Furthermore, even for the same performer, Tuesday's Hamlet will be ever so slightly different from Wednesday's. Second, beyond putting a work into the hands of a unique artist performer, intersubjective engagement is the province of every listener or spectator. And it is a commonplace understanding that a work of art is only fully and contingently made manifest via the active interpretation by an audience. And Susan Bennett makes this point in her groundbreaking book, Theater Audiences, where she draws on reader response theorists like Wolfgang Iser and Hans Robert Jauss to describe the specific nature of the processes of an interpretive audience. And Jacques Rancière covers similar territory in his rehabilitation of spectatorship, also arguing that interpretive meaning making is valuable work. Both agree that this work is not only active, but also properly individually variable. And Rancière writes, the spectator also acts. She observes, selects, compares, interprets. She composes her own poem with the elements of the poem before her. She participates in the performance by refashioning it in her own way. So the work done by a participatory co-creative audience combines both of these roles, participating in two ways, being both a durational performer and also an interpretive meaning maker. All art exists on this continuum between control and randomness, and various placements on this line are not unfamiliar. The theater tradition that is currently dominant in Canada derives from 19th century European models of the Gesamtkunstwerk and tends to value authored scripts, rigorous rehearsal to ensure near perfect repeatability, and a closed border between actors and audience. And this form that I am calling bourgeois theater, or sit quietly in the dark theater, manifests high control with low randomness. By contrast, art movements like Fluxus event scores that not only invite but expect creative input from a performer participant manifest low control with high randomness. My favorite Fluxus event score is number 2, Proposition 1962 by Alison Knowles. The work, which premiered at the Institute for Contemporary Arts in London, simply states, make a salad. And although the best known performances of this work in recent decades have featured very large scale salad assembly, this is Alison Knowles here, pictured with the rake in the orange shirt and the white pants. In an April 2012 interview given by Knowles, she says, quote, I think the salad fits anywhere. I think it fits into a romantic 2-person dinner. You know, I was sitting in the presidential dining room a while ago and they served a salad. They didn't realize they were doing my piece. I need to say here that Alison Knowles is a genius, and her conception of the piece that salad everywhere is a performance of her artwork makes my heart sing and has changed salad for me forever. This is peak randomness. Food notwithstanding, an event score is a recipe. Hannah Higgins, who happens to be Knowles' daughter as well as an art historian, writes in her book, Fluxus Experience, that it was George Brecht, no relation to Bertolt Brecht, who first used the term event scores to describe these works. Yoko Ono, one of the original core members of the Fluxus movement, calls them instructional poems. Knowles defines an event score as a 1 or 2 line recipe for action. Event scores involve simple actions, ideas, and objects from everyday life, recontextualized as performance. Event scores basically say, do this. Do this is a core dramaturgical strategy for participatory theater. When called upon to participate, we need to be told what to do, and where, and when, and how, and what not to do. The originator of the recipe is what Janet Murray in her book, Hamlet on the Holodeck, calls the procedural author. In her work on digital narratives and video games, Murray recognizes this need for a different kind of guidance for interactive players and readers. Not only does the text need an author in the usual sense, but the world-specific rules of engagement also need to be authored. And Murray writes, procedural authorship means writing the rules by which texts appear, as well as writing the texts themselves. It means writing the rules for the interactor's involvement, that is, the conditions under which things will happen in response to the participant's actions. The procedural author creates not just a set of scenes, but a work of narrative possibilities. Recontextualizing Murray's definition to live theater performance, Gareth White notes not only the need for a controlling framework, but also a corresponding need to provide and articulate spaces of participation. As he points out, a significant part of an interactive work consists of creating the structure within which particular gaps appear. And the work of the interactive performance consists of repeating this structure and allowing the participants to fill in gaps in different ways in each fresh iteration of the work. In this way, the recipe addresses both of these aspects of participation. The event comes into existence both from the structure and from how the gaps are filled. If the recipe is a foundational description of the participatory world event framework, somehow that framework needs to be communicated to us. We are newbies in each and every new world and in desperate need of instruction. If our role were to sit back and observe and interpret, then we don't need much, if any, direction. Our capacity for breaking the world or breaking the performance event is extremely limited. If we are to be participants, however, one strategy for acclimatizing newbie participants to their new world is to cast us in roles or functions that allow for our ignorance and empower us to ask questions. So for example, we might be detectives or party guests or travelers from away. Another strategy is for the content of the recipe to be delivered inside the fiction via a character type that we are calling the guide. Guide characters might be coaches or teachers or even retail salespeople, blending local experience with a built-in assistive function. A scene partner is another kind of guide where the audience is cast into a specific reciprocal relationship to an actor character. Yet another strategy does not require assigning roles to either audience, players, or performers. Instead, the actions or not actions expected by the recipe are silently implied by the built physical environment or other contextual factors. Sometimes, as with a text-based event score, we are simply handed the recipe and left to our own devices. A prime example of being given a recipe or an event score and then being expected to autonomously realize the performant event is Amanda Summ's New Age Attitudes live in concert. Summ is a Vancouver-based actor, musician, composer, and interactive theater creator. Subtitled A Lo-Fi Listen, the concert arrives in the mail, a brown envelope about the size and weight of a CD. And before I opened it, I actually thought it was a CD, and this seemed to me to be an obvious way to present a concert of music remotely. And my was I surprised. Inside the envelope was not a CD, but a handmade, somewhat roughly assembled brown construction paper booklet of approximately a dozen pages. And the first instruction is on the cover, just under the show title, open at 8 p.m. Again, I'm perplexed and my expectations confounded. 8 p.m. on what day? 8 p.m. in what time zone? My brain moves slowly sometimes, and it takes me a while to realize there is no live stream scheduled. The show happens whenever I begin, which could be 8 p.m. or not. Before I move on to talking about the performance itself, I want to pause and consider the dramaturgical characteristics of theater by male, en route to ultimately demonstrating how these specific dramaturgies in the context of a particular time and place operate to shape our understanding of this work. Participatory theater is premised on a reciprocal connection between the performer and or performance and the audience participant. Relationality lies at the heart of these kinds of works. And this is where we get emergence out of the iterative feedback loops. And this is what Erica Fischer-Lichte is talking about in The Transformative Power of Performance, when she brings the term autopoiesis from biology to drama. The performance issues an invitation which the audience player takes up, and their co-creative contribution influences the performance. And when theater happens live in person, this exchange happens in the real time of now, in the shared space of here, sometimes in close physical proximity, sometimes via direct gaze, sometimes via conversation or an interview, sometimes through touch. The specific focus then for this analysis is, how do dramaturgical features of male shape the relational conduit when we are both not now and we are both not here? Okay, first of all, male is asynchronous. The time delay between the sender and the receiver is substantial, extending even at its quickest over several days. Each person at either end of this conduit acts independently from the other. Reading and writing are never simultaneous. First one, then a delay, and then the other. Notably, the partners do not bear witness to the moment of the other's action. Second, male also means that in our connection, there is no face and no voice. The receiver is not engaged by the eye contact of a gaze, and nor, unless they have met before, are they privy to knowing the sender's face or body or age or gender performance, and so on. And relatedly, there is no voice. The text of a letter may have a tone or a mood conveyed by the arrangement of words or even the style of handwriting, but there's no sound, there's no orality. And finally, mail is a tangible object. It moves across geography, traveling through the postal service from there to here. This is what mail is. The thing that was touched by the sender is also then later touched by the receiver. It could be handcrafted, but not necessarily. Also, the object exists before I open it. There's an anticipation in arrival and then a kind of pleasure in the unwrapping or unboxing. And as a correlative, it also exists afterwards. There are remains, perhaps a souvenir. It is worth noting that all of these characteristics are meaningfully heightened in relation, first, to how they do or do not align with live participatory theater practice. For example, consider the dynamics, both thrilling and awkward, of looking at and being looked at by an actual person, a stranger, who is now a scene partner. And second, in relation to life under the work from home, remote schooling, and online shopping phase of the early pandemic. Consider the intense focus at that time of isolation on the ordering and arrival of things that were delivered. Back to New Age attitudes, live in concert, and creator Amanda Sum. Before the concert proper, the booklet invites me to sign a contract between parties where Amanda is Amanda, she's already signed, and I am Audient. And I add my signature beside the X, agreeing to share this night, this time, and this space with each other. The concert is composed of 6 songs, interspersed with some banter and direct address mini essays. The songs are a mixture of listening instructions, close your eyes, count from 1 to 60, one-sided banter from Amanda, let's sit in this minute together, shall we? Can you hear me? I'm singing to you. And verbal descriptions of the music, echoey atmospheric synth in an F major chord, clear and warm, paired with printed lyrics. Notice here the scenographic markers of live performance, the iconic red curtain, the spotlight, and even the corded microphone. What emerges over the course of the concert is what I would describe as a 2-part theme. One part develops a sustained meditation on being alone. Being alone is characterized as being lonely, but also as strength and a comfortable independence. Quote, I get to be my own. I'll do it by myself. I can whisper when I walk, tell the trails all my secrets. Don't gotta worry if they'll tattle or if they'll keep it. This, of course, maps nicely onto my reading and imagining as listening context. Quote, maybe like how you are in your room right now. This kind of solitary experience is what mail is: private, silent, and intimate. Just like the forest walk that Amanda describes, a letter is a place to store a secret. The reading and writing of letters are close-kept activities, not just solitary, but also manifesting in a fairly small, circumscribed spatiality, in our hands. In another song, Amanda figures her solitary body as being fashioned from paper. Quote, a small house, a clean room, a dead space, a cocoon. Cut me out. It's lonely. Then take my limbs and hold me closer. Pick the pieces when they fall, put together, and make a human catalog of my body, shape me. And of course, she is made of paper here. Amanda is only paper, and paper that we are not only reading, but handling. And you can see since the 18th century, which marks the beginnings of the universal codified postal system, why letters carry certain cultural meanings, having been associated with political subversion, illicit sexual liaisons, see also Valentine's Day as a postal festival, and even occult practice. And beyond that, this kind of solitary, introspective, close-up experience is what for many pandemic isolation is. As Amanda as mail puts herself into that contained circle of close proximity. As she notes on the land acknowledgement page of her concert book, this was made on the unceded territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and the Tsleil-Waututh nations, also known as Vancouver, and it will be performed in your hands wherever you may be. For the second part, the song lyrics and Amanda's asides emphasize that we are not only alone, but that we are also tethered in a meaningful way to Amanda. There's a section between songs of what Amanda terms awkward banter. She writes, tell me about yourself so that I'm not the only one performing awkward banter. And this invitation links me explicitly to Amanda. Tell me. But also we are connected by the suggestion that we are both doing the same thing. And the next page features 2 prompts with 3 blank lines under each for us to fill in. Your simple pleasures, the smell of a new book, unintentional matching outfits, fresh sheets, and your simple pains, glasses that fog in the fucking rain. It's not quite an exchange, but in that stretched, imagined space-time between past Amanda and future Jenn, there is a relational bridge. The same song about telling my secrets to the trail as I walk concludes with, so I'll turn to you when the timing is right. The trails are only nice in the summertime. All I really know is that you were wearing green and I was wearing paisley. This pairing of ideas filters through the whole concert. Amanda will say, I like being here and spending time with you, followed by a song about saying, doing, and knowing something that nobody knows. So put it away and lock it down, lock it light, lock it low. And then in the next verse, something you want, something you wish, something you wear, nobody cares. And so we get this oscillation between being alone, which is sometimes invisibility or isolation, but is sometimes empowered autonomy. Sometimes it is both simultaneously, and being in relation to others, specifically Amanda. What fascinates me is that this doubled theme made manifest in the content experience of New Age attitudes is repeated in the formal dramaturgical characteristics of mail. The writing and reading of mail is an autonomous creation. The player performer is perhaps not always literally alone, but could be, but is alone insofar as they are entirely both the audience and the performer, separated from the procedural artist author. Mail by definition is transferable and transmissible across time and space. And yet the asynchronous and distant enactment of this performance by mail is not entirely autonomous. The instructions of the event score itself constitute a bridge back to the author, activating a bilateral relationality. Amanda speaks to me via the concert booklet, and my performance responds to Amanda. We cannot see or hear each other alone and yet together. It is a kind of relational interaction running once in each direction, but it does not loop. Amanda is aware of me somewhere in her future. I am aware of Amanda somewhere in my past. We might coincidentally occupy synchronous time, but we can't know it, and the performance does not expect it. In the end, Amanda explicitly recognizes the low control, high randomness dynamic in her piece. Quote, maybe you flipped through this in a couple of minutes, or maybe you accepted the invite to indulge in time together. She points to the tangible form of the booklet itself as something that might persist beyond the performance moment. She seems to suggest that even dormant, quote, even after time is exhausted and retires for the night, the male performance carries our shared experience, holding memory, but also a series of potentialities for other alternate and ongoing exchanges. Quote, maybe we do eat, maybe we drink, we do entertain, or maybe we simply listen. Because as much as you are my audience, or what have you, I am yours. Thank you. Okay, this slide says questions, but we will have questions at the end.